All right. So for top companies and careers for remote jobs this year, we are going to talk about remote work trends and statistics, top companies for remote jobs based on FlexJobs data. We'll talk about the top career categories and remote job titles as well. And then after giving all that information, I really do want to help by giving you guys some information to put into practice ways that you can make sure you are setting yourself up as a competitive remote job applicant. So we'll talk about some of those best practices before we dive into the Q&A at the end. All right. So let's go ahead and first start with some of the trends and preferences surrounding remote work over the last year or so. All right. So let's first take a step back and define what a remote job is. It is a professional level job that allows you to work from home either all of the time or part of that time. So it doesn't have to be that you are fully remote to be considered remote. It could be a hybrid job, which allows you to have some time in office and at home, or it could also be a flexible working arrangement where you do have the option occasionally during special circumstances to work outside of the office. All right. So a remote job is not, we can be sure that it is not a fully in-person job, which means that companies that are implementing return to office or mandates or RTO mandates and policies that don't permit any type of remote option might be at risk of losing talent, because listen to some of these statistics that we found in our recent surveys. 35% of people know somebody who has quit their job or thought about quitting because of an RTO policy implementation. Also, 57% of people that we surveyed would look for a new job is something that I think is interesting as job seekers, that companies need to consider what might happen as a result of an RTO mandate. The good news, though, with some of these policies is that a lot of the companies are allowing for a hybrid work arrangement, which gives people like us who are wanting to work remotely at least some measure of flexibility that we crave, which is really great. I do also want to point out that over the last year, there were other trends that we saw in certain industries. There were layoffs, certain industries, certain sectors rather slowed their hiring. The job market, the numbers were kind of all over the place when they were released from the US anyway. So there was a little bit of cooling in the job market. So there was a decrease in the total number of remote job postings as well. However, the good news is at FlexJobs, we actually did see an increase in the number of remote job listings over the last year in regard to the previous year. So the data that we looked at showed that remote postings as a percentage of overall job postings did continue to grow, and we were able to add those to our FlexJobs database for you, the job seeker. Some other trends I think that are really interesting to point out, because the last 5 years have really changed the course of remote work for the long term and how we conduct our work on a daily basis. Prior to the pandemic, prior to 2020, so in 2019, early 2020, 4.9%, so just under 5% of US folks worked from home full time. Currently, what we see from data is that 27% of US employees are fully hybrid, meaning they have some combination of remote and in office, and 11% actually work from home fully remotely. So that under 5% doubled to over, well, more than doubled to over 11% in just the 5 years in terms of people working fully remote. But there are actually 38% of US employees that have some level of remote work that they are doing. And other experts predict that there will be 33 million Americans who work from home, at least in a hybrid capacity, by the end of this year. So this is really over a 400% increase from prior to the pandemic, from pre-pandemic levels, where there were only less than around 7 million people working remotely. So these remote and hybrid opportunities have definitely grown over the last 4 years. We've also seen a significant increase in people searching for remote jobs as well. And many of you who have been in a job search for several months are maybe feeling some of that, as it's taking a long time, that the market for remote jobs is very competitive. Remote and hybrid jobs tend to attract 3 to 7 times the number of applicants than a job posting for an in-person role. However, keep in mind that if you are doing events like this, if you are educating yourself and learning about how to search for the right jobs, how to present yourself well, you are positioning yourself ahead of people who haven't been doing that work. Other trends, when we survey people, workers, working professionals, that I think are interesting to note here. It helps us sort of keep our finger on the pulse of, what's going on out in the work landscape. And much of what we found is not surprising, like the fact that 95% of workers want some type of remote work, which of course, as we've mentioned, could be fully remote, but also hybrid working arrangements or just the occasional option to work remotely. One thing that did surprise us a little bit in a survey that we did a few months ago was that 63% of people actually responded that they would prioritize remote work options higher than the salary option. Now, to me, this didn't surprise me necessarily. I mean, as a whole, it does, of course. But when I started working remotely, that was something that I had in my consideration bucket because of the need to work remotely. And part of that explanation that people might feel that way is similar to what I was thinking as well, is you don't have to pay for a commute or a parking space or the gas that you need if you're commuting or taking public transportation. So if you work remotely, you do save some money. It also reduces wear and tear on your vehicle if you have a car. It allows you to maybe not eat out as much as you would if you were working in the office, and certainly like clothing budget might go down a little bit as well, depending on what line of work you are in. So I think that it makes sense that a lot of people consider the whole benefit package when they're looking for a job, which includes the remote work level that is offered by the employer. We also found that a rather high percentage of working professionals like to work in a hybrid environment. So not everybody wants to work fully remote, although that still does lead over non-fully remote work. So 51% of people prefer a 100% remote environment, but 46% said that of working professionals said that they would like to have the option to work in a hybrid capacity. This is something I think is interesting, and you may have seen this or felt this yourself if you work remotely, that 77% of people from a survey indicated that they believe they are more productive working remotely. This is something that you might be able to share and give examples of in an upcoming job interview you have about how effective and efficient you are working remotely. And so I think that that statistic is probably true for many of us here that have worked remotely. We feel like we are more productive, and you can really parlay that information to an employee and how it has a positive, a potential employer, and how the impact would be positive on the organization. But remote work, hybrid work tends to have people feel like it does have a positive effect on mental health by providing a better work-life balance. And so the bottom line really is that these trends and statistics really indicate the popularity of remote work, and that's continuing to remain high even since 2020, 2021, 2022. And so we would continue to hope to see the remote work sector continue to grow. All right, so let's dive into some of the details about our top companies for remote jobs list for this year. The 100 featured companies that had the highest number of remote career openings throughout the last year and are also currently hiring for remote jobs, including hybrid options. So FlexJobs actually started creating this list in 2014. So this is, I think, our 12th installment of this list, and it was created for a couple of reasons. First, we wanted to be able to recognize employers that are dedicated to providing remote and flexible work options for their employees. Because not all employers truly embrace these benefits to both their employees and their organizations that remote work can provide. Like we touched on already, remote work can provide a better work-life balance. Many people are more productive in a remote environment, and it can also have a positive impact on employees' mental health, as we discussed. Plus, from the employer's perspective, it does provide and it can provide cost savings like reducing overhead. It helps attract and retain a wider range of talented professionals. It can reduce absenteeism and increase productivity, as we talked about. So there's like a win-win. And it can even reduce the company's environmental impact, which again is another win for everybody. A more important reason for creating this list is because we wanted to help you as a job seeker connect. We wanted to connect you to the companies that are prioritizing remote and flexible work, because it can help you be more laser focused in your job search. You know, one of the things that I think we do a lot when we're looking for jobs is just go through job postings, which of course you have to do, but a really helpful method of job searching is creating a target company list. Sometimes this is called the reverse job search, but really what it means is you identify and track organizations that hire for the type of roles that you're interested in, as well as those that offer the work environment that aligns with your needs and preferences. So if you are a job seeker that is prioritizing remote and flexible work options, this is the list that can be a great place to start your research for companies to add to your target company list. If you look at the resource or handouts tab, you'll see a link to the top 100 list included there. Again, we'll get this sent out in the resources as well. But you'll notice that each company name is hyperlinked. And when you click on the individual companies, you'll get a nice company overview. You'll get a link to their website and their social channels. And you can even see jobs that they have available right now if you're logged into your FlexJobs account. From there, you can determine if this company could be a good fit for you and maybe consider adding them to your target list. Either way, the main goal is to try to connect you with companies that are offering the highest number of remote job openings in the hopes of getting you on the right path in your job search with your action plan to establish some momentum. In terms of how we develop the list every year, we actually look at data from over 60,000 companies in our database, the job postings that they have on FlexJobs between January 1st and December 31st of the previous year. And this gives you the most recent and up-to-date data that we have on each of these companies. All right, so drum roll, right? The top companies on the list from this year are Working Solutions, Live Ops, United Health Group, Kelly, TELUS. You can read the rest of them here. And also, as you're going through them, you can see that these are from all different industries. There's staffing agencies, medical industries, education companies, travel companies, tech companies, all of these. There is such variety, even in just the top 10 of the 100. You will see more variety on the full list as well. We saw 33 new companies join our top 100 list for the first time, which is so exciting. And that included some large and well-known organizations. And so someone like me, who fully advocates for remote work options, it's really encouraging to see these new organizations fully embracing remote offerings for their employees. They're understanding the assignment, if you will. We also had a lot of companies that returned to the list, which is always good to see as well. It's nice that organizations outside of the more traditional remote employers like healthcare companies are providing remote work options for job seekers. All right. And just to close out this section of the presentation that we're focusing on the employers that made the list, I want to include a sampling of some of the other well-known companies, institutions, and organizations that are widely recognized brands. Chances are really good that you maybe recognize some of these companies, and you might want to work for any of them on the top 100 list. So I definitely recommend checking out the full list that's included, and you will be emailed. Again, this could help you form a base for your target companies to then execute your job search action plan in terms of networking, applying for jobs at those companies, and really embracing the reverse job search strategy mentioned earlier. Okay, so let's talk now about some of the top categories for remote work. On this slide, we have the terms that were most frequently searched for on the FlexJobs site website by job seekers. So looking for data entry, Spanish, virtual administration, proofreading, computer and IT. You can see some of those popular remote job search terms. And on the next slide, this slide are the top career categories with remote job postings. So we've got the list of 100 companies, and then we were able to break it into the top searched terms, remote job search terms, and top career categories. And so these are some of the career categories you can see on the slide here. Again, many different industries represented here. And if you don't see yours, that's fine. That doesn't mean you don't have options. This, again, is just to help you kind of ideate through the information that we have and that we're sharing with you to put, a plan together that's going to be most effective for you. Now, here's some other noteworthy information to include. Project management, computer IT, operations, and accounting and finance all saw hiring gains last year compared to the previous year. I think what's interesting is looking at the level breakdown of remote jobs that have posted on FlexJobs. You can see on the slide that most of the roles are experience level roles by a large margin. 70% of the jobs required, were considered experienced job level. And then we had the manager next at 14%, senior level roles at 10%, and entry level made up the remaining 6%. So once again, this just kind of shows the wide range of remote options that are available to job seekers, which should kind of bring some comfort to know that remote jobs really represent a broad array of industries, background, and experience levels. All right, so that's the end of the data. Let's talk about how you can set yourself up for the most success as a job applicant before we dive into our Q&A. All right, so as I mentioned earlier, a big reason why we create different lists of employers like this at FlexJobs is because it can be helpful for you to create that target company list. So researching companies that provide the culture and the environment you want is really important because you want to be excited about where you are going to work. So you can leverage resources like this list as a starting point. If you are someone who prioritizes remote jobs in your search, this type of list is so helpful because it gives you links to companies so that you can research them very easily. You can create a spreadsheet from there or however you want to track the companies that you are interested in working for. From there, you can look to see what open roles the company have. You can follow them on FlexJobs. You can follow them on LinkedIn. You can make sure you're engaging with them on those platforms and be more visible to them. Also, when you are searching and looking to identify jobs in a more general sense, remote jobs, it's helpful to utilize advanced search features on the website. You can select filters. I don't know if everybody knows this, but we do have a filter where you can select the level of remote work. So if you only are open to hybrid work, you can select that filter. As I mentioned really early on in the presentation, there's really fully remote jobs, hybrid jobs, jobs with no remote work, and jobs with an option for remote work. So these filters are important to use so it can help you make sure your job search is laser focused on the type of schedule that you're looking for at the type of company you want to work for. So that is what you want to do. Identify companies, identify job postings, connect with them, and then you want to think about when you apply for jobs, you want to make sure your resume is remote focused. You need to convey to the potential employer that you can work effectively in a remote environment. So the first thing you want to do is to think about any remote work experience that could be included and should be on your resume if you have it. Keep in mind, it does not have to be a formal, traditional remote workplace or remote schedule. It can be those optional things. It can be taking online courses or maybe working remotely temporarily, like many people did during the pandemic. Or even if you work in an office, but you work with clients who you use video conferencing with, or they're in different time zones and you operate that way, that is a distributed team or distributed client, and that is remote experience. It's really a good idea to include a technology skills section on your resume where you are highlighting your technical proficiencies, particularly different remote communication tools like Zoom, Google Meet, Dropbox, Slack, Microsoft Teams, things like that. Job descriptions tend to mention the technology tools you might need to use. Then you also want to think about the type of transferable skills that you have, soft or hard transferable skills that are valuable in a remote environment. So soft skills like communication, collaboration, time management, and problem solving are all highly important skills when you work on a remote team. You do want to keep in mind, though, that just listing them on your resume is not enough. You can do that, but you also should aim to include in your bullet points of your accomplishments and results examples of the way that you've used those skills, and the positive results you achieved when you use them. For instance, if I simply listed problem solving as a key skill on my resume without actually providing an example of how I have effectively resolved a problem and how that solution led to a positive outcome, how do you know if I'm actually a good problem solver if I'm just putting that on the resume, right? So you have to provide some context. One other important thing to think about is that it's really helpful to tailor your resume for each individual application. So you've got to highlight your remote friendly skills. That's important. You also have to tailor your resume for each individual job that you apply to. So when you are reviewing those job descriptions, pay attention to what the employer is looking for in their candidate. What skills they mention, what qualifications they mention, what responsibilities, so that you can then modify your resume to showcase those relevant skills, experiences, and accomplishments from your background that most closely align with their needs for filling that role. So basically what you're doing is thinking about your audience when you're submitting your resume, which is the hiring team, and what matters to them. What do they need to know to invite you in for an interview? A pretty effective method for doing this is to focus your tailoring efforts on your professional summary section at the top of your resume so that you can quickly catch the employer's attention. That's where the most effort should be put into tailoring your resume. And then you can work on the rest of it, your work experience and your education section, to see if you need to, work on any keywords in those sections. All right. So let's talk about one other really important, or I should say another, because we have a couple more slides, another important piece of your job search, which is networking. It's critical in today's job search, particularly as competitive as it is. And if you've been listening and know about the reverse job search, we've been talking about those target companies on your list that you are going to create. If you haven't already, you want to execute a networking strategy with those target companies. Using social media platforms like the ones that are geared more towards working professionals like LinkedIn, can help you find others who are doing the type of work that you want to be doing and working for the types of companies you want to work for. So you can follow them, you can engage with them, connect with them, ask for informational interviews, listen and read to what they're saying. Eventually, as you interact with them more, you again could ask them to do something like an informational interview, to ask questions about where they work, if it's a company you're interested in working for. If they're willing, which most people are. Now, not everybody responds, and that's okay. But you can get some really helpful information about what it might be like to work at that company. And also, it might turn into a referral. A lot of employers do have an employee referral program for positions that are open. When you are part of your networking plan, yes, you have to do the work to network, but you definitely want to make sure that your profiles are fully optimized, meaning that the information that is out there about you and your experience is relevant to your target audience. That's what's important. This is the second time we've talked about audiences. And everything is professional and appropriate. You should have sort of a personal brand that establishes you as an expert in the type of job that you are looking for. So as you cultivate these relationships with your target connections or target companies, you want to make sure that they know that you are helpful, supportive, thoughtful, and passionate about the type of work you want, the industry you want to be in. And essentially, you want to be someone that others will want to connect with. If you're only trying to connect with people so you can get favors, so they can do something for you, and not taking time to cultivate relationships, this is not something that will have a good return on your time investment. And so you do want to be very mindful about how you are networking. All right. So now you want to prepare for interviews. You've updated your resume, you've applied for jobs, you've networked appropriately, and now you're getting ready for interviews. It's really important that you are effectively preparing for them, because this is going to help you perform well during the interview, but it will also give you a confidence boost going into the interview. And everyone should be confident going into the interview because the employer has already identified that they think you would be a good fit. And so they like what they see. While there are some distinct differences between remote and in-person interviews, a lot of preparation efforts are going to be the same. So regardless of the type of interview, your preparation should include analyzing the job description. So when you apply to a job, copy that job, print it off, put it somewhere, because sometimes when companies are in the interview process, they take the job posting down when they're no longer accepting applications, but you're still in the process for interviewing. So you want to make sure you have that information so you can analyze it. Researching the company, think about how your experience aligns with the role. Think about commonly asked interview questions so you can prepare your behavioral answers in the STAR method: situation, task, action, and result. This is going to help you maintain your confidence going into that interview. Now, there are some unique aspects of remote interviews that I do want to mention. The first is to figure out what type of interview you'll be doing and make sure that you know what technology you need ahead of time so that you can download it, practice it, make sure that your background, if it's on video, all of those things are working appropriately. You could have a phone screen, which is pretty straightforward. You might have a one-way interview where you are answering questions and recording yourself on camera. These are typically reserved for first round interviews. Rarely, but sometimes there could be a text-based interview. And while these are rare, I do always caution people, make sure you're doing due diligence on, this company and knowing when the in-person or live interviews will be. Video conferencing interviews like with Zoom or Google Meet usually are reserved for second round, but not always. And they're probably the most common type of interview you will have. Microsoft Teams too. I don't think I mentioned that when applying for remote roles. So No matter the type of interview you're having, try to find out what type of tech you'll be using, test it ahead of time, make sure your internet signal is great, strong, and then have a backup plan in place, like setting up a hotspot in your home and downloading whatever video conferencing app onto your phone in case you need it. Okay, so what do you need to do going forward? Well, you want to familiarize yourself with the companies that prioritize remote work and the flexible remote work options that you are willing and want to do, that you desire. Develop your target roles and companies list to focus your job search in that direction. Demonstrate what remote skills you have, remote experience you have on your resume, and also put together an intentional networking plan. And finally, understanding the nuances of remote interviews so that you can prepare thoroughly will help make sure you set yourself up for the most success. All right, as I promised, we're going to go into the questions, but please do check out our blog, which has so many articles, thousands of articles on any topic you could wonder about in your job search. Those are all free, and you can go to flexjobs.com blog and also search for specific topics that you are looking for. All right, everybody, let's go ahead and get to our questions. Hey, y'all, it's Tony. Let's get to these questions. I'm going to get through as many as I can today. The first two questions are really the same ones. So they're about whether or not, or how can you know if advertised jobs are real jobs? So there's a couple things to look for. First, I will say that you want to use a trusted job board. And to my knowledge, I don't know what other job boards do to vet the jobs before they're posted on their site. I can only tell you what FlexJobs does before we post a job to our site. So all of the jobs on the FlexJobs site are researched and vetted to make sure they are legitimate professional opportunities before they ever get posted as an available job on our site. So you want to make sure that you have a trusted site that you're using to find your jobs. Now, beyond that, if you're finding a job on another site and you're not quite sure how they vet their jobs prior to getting those on the site, you want to look for things like spelling errors. If a company is offering an extraordinary amount of money for not a difficult job or for a very entry level job, if they're asking you for money up front, those are some things that are red flags and really sort of warrant a little bit more research and due diligence on your part to verify that those jobs are real. If you're finding a job on a job board, you want to go to the company career page and make sure that you find that job posted on the company page as well, to make sure that the company is actually a legitimate company and hiring for that role. If currently reading in the US but planning to move to Europe, I think maybe that's living. If currently living in the US but planning to move to Europe in the summer permanently, which country should I be applying from? So this is, it depends on where you are able to work legally. Countries have requirements to be able to work within their country. Also, keep in mind that a job search for some people, depending on the type of job you're looking for, the type of remote you want to do, where you are located in the world, job searches are taking anywhere from 3 to 6 months. For some people, a little bit longer, a little bit shorter. And so you might be able to do some searches for jobs with the location of the country that you are moving to right now, kind of get a lay of the land and see and start kind of putting feelers out there, letting them know in your cover letter and on your resume that you're relocating. You can also look for jobs. We have a filter on the FlexJobs site. So for any of you that are not, that would like to work, anywhere in the world or from a specific country, you can filter to that specific country, or even filter the jobs on the FlexJobs site to jobs that are available anywhere in the world. It's not so as a remote employee, those of us that want to work remote or have worked remote, we know that we can work from anywhere, no problem. We can get our work done for the company. However, companies have to follow tax and employee rules and regulations where they are based. So city, state, country, continent, all of those things are in play. And so, if you live in London and you find a great job that you'd love to apply for, but that company can only hire people who live in California or New York State, I wouldn't recommend you apply for that job, unless you have a visa to be able to, be hired for those roles, because that's not where you live. They need somebody there for, geographic reasons, for tax reasons. They're not set up to hire somebody who lives in London. If you're relocating, you can do that. And so those are some things that you want to think about as you are doing your job search and your plan for remote work. Same question for the next. If you're US based but want to work remotely for a European company, what's the best way to locate opportunities in those countries? You could actually kind of do a search for European based companies, and then you would have to do some more research on what it would take to be hired there. And then kind of gather that information and go on, put a plan together to reach those companies. Is there specific companies or staffing companies that specialize in hiring remote internal auditors? There might be. I'm not familiar with a specific company that only specializes in that. You could use the FlexJobs research companies portion of the website, or you could certainly do a Google search or use an AI tool like ChatGPT or Perplexity to see if they can help you identify a specific staffing company. What are the skills needed in demand? I am planning to go back to college to get certifications to have better opportunities. Well, I think that this is a wide open question, and it really depends on what it is you want to do and what your goals are. If you're specifically asking just about remote work skills, there's some technology know-how that's required. Unless you're in IT or software development, you don't necessarily have to be a tech expert. I certainly am not, but you do need to know your way around a computer and certain technology programs. Communication skills are really important in remote work, embracing change and lifelong learning. And so what I would recommend doing is, if you're not sure what you want to do, first identify through doing some skills tests using a site like Career One Stop or something like that to determine some ideas for you for what you might pursue. And then from there, when you can narrow down what you might like to pursue, you can start to kind of peruse job postings and do some research on what types of skills are required for that type of role. And then you can formulate what certifications make sense to pursue from there when you have a little bit more information. Given the advent of AI, what remote jobs do you think are potentially the most stable jobs for the next 5 years? Again, this is going to be very industry dependent and dependent upon how each industry adapts and uses AI. What I will say is that all of us should get comfortable and familiar with AI tools and using them, because at a minimum, I feel like the work that we do can be enhanced, or perhaps we can be more efficient and more productive, leaning into some of the resources or some of the tools or some of the benefits of AI tools and what they can do to help make our work more efficient and productive. Looks like the remote work trend slide rings true here. How do you propose to break the stigma of those working from home are not working as hard? A lot of our surveys that we have at FlexJobs, where we survey workers, thousands of employees across the globe, really show that the majority of people who work remotely do say and feel they are more productive and effective. And so that's sort of the message, that's sort of the reality of it, is that actually people feel like they are more effective and productive being able to work from home. And it is an easier way to manage your time in terms of, kind of removing the commute and the time that it takes to transition from commuting to office and back. So those are some things that I think are really important that, kind of experts in the remote space are making sure people are hearing. Let's see. How do you manage conflicts within business and those employees who are given remote roles compared to others who must be in the office? This is something that I think requires some really strong's not the right word. It requires proactive communication. Um, if you are somebody who's required to be in the office and there are people in your company who are not required to be in the office, if you would like to have a more flexible schedule with some remote options, I would work on a proposal to have with your manager, schedule a meeting to kind of go through some of the benefits of that you would bring to the organization if you were able to have a hybrid or a remote schedule, and even offer, if there's some resistance to committing to that permanently or on a permanent basis, offer to do a trial run of 30, 60, or 90 days with check-ins to sort of evaluate the progress since you have started with that arrangement. Let's see. Where do we go to find job postings for this that aren't fake? I'm quite tired of putting in applications and immediately getting spam calls because it was a phishing posting. Yeah, it is really frustrating because the job market right now, if you heard me say earlier how long it takes to find a job, most of us are applying to multiple dozens of jobs and not hearing back, or if we hear back, it's really disappointing if it does seem as though it is a spam call. So again, use a trusted job board. Of course, I will say FlexJobs because I know that is, we spend a lot of time and energy to make sure that we are eliminating scams on our site. Actually, on March 4th, if you're interested, we do have a webinar from our team on how to avoid job scams. So I encourage all of you to sign up for that because there's so much helpful information. We do an entire webinar on the subject of job scams and making sure, not to fall to those. So if you're using a different job board, again, look out for those red flags, do some due diligence and some additional research going from there. All right, next question. Can you put desired income into FlexJobs and search by that? Not yet. So sneak peek on what's coming soon. So thank you for asking that question. Let's see. What is the likelihood of finding remote work and you are based in the Caribbean islands? Look, so as I mentioned, 95% of remote jobs do have a location requirement. Most jobs that are remote on the FlexJobs site have a location requirement of somewhere in North America. That does not mean it's impossible to find a remote job if you are outside of North America. If you are on a different continent or in an island or anything like that, it just might take you a little while longer. So what I would do is I would search based on the island where you will be, or also search for jobs that are available anywhere in the world, because that does not require you to have a location. Now, those lists or those results that you will find from a job search like that are going to be smaller than if you were, working in, somewhere that like in the United States. That's just the reality of it, is that of where we're at right now. However, more companies are leaning into remote and hybrid work across the globe. And so, hopefully that will get a little bit easier as people go who are, in some more, distant places, adopting remote work. And so hopefully you'll see that change. Thank you for the information you have provided, and especially appreciative of the list of companies you have supplied. Does FlexJobs contact non-remote companies to advocate for remote job opportunities? Thank you. We are focused on helping you all as job seekers be able to have the resources and tools you need to find that flexible and remote job for you. Let's see. Looks like we have time. I'll do one more question. I know we're out of time. I found that remote jobs doesn't mean work for anywhere you want. I am fully trilingual Canadian citizen living in Mexico, but still paying taxes and having a fixed Canadian address. That means I am 100% legally able to work for a Canadian company, but even with that, for 100% remote positions, employers want someone who is physically in Canada, and that's somewhat frustrating. Do you have any advice and recommendations? Thank you. This is exactly what I was explaining before. And so, yes, you might want to adjust your search to roles that are available anywhere in the world, because that would sort of rid the requirement of having somebody in Canada or in Mexico. Now, you may still have to pay taxes for Canada, as an expat, or that's what we call them in the States anyway. And so that's something that there's likely no workaround. But again, I'm not offering legal advice or tax advice or anything like that. So you have to do research on that end. But I would expand your search to jobs that are available anywhere in the world, or you might be able to find a company who's headquartered or based in Mexico that does hire international employees. But that again, you should do some additional research to kind of figure out if that type of company exists and if it allows or hires for jobs in the career field that you are in. All right, everybody. Hopefully this was helpful today. Again, we have many more webinars this week. We have the job scam webinar coming up on March 4th, but many more before that. Check out your email or take a look at your email in the next couple of days to see the recap recording as well as the resources that we provided. And as always, we appreciate you being here and have a really great day.